The bigger body, which is not talked about in the Mexican hearing, is this body called Maria, right? She had elongated head, 3 fingers, 3 toes. And we had x-rays, CAT scans. We had a God, I can't remember what it's called, tomography done, so you could see the bands of muscles wrap around the bones and all that, so you can really see details. You can cut inside and you could see if anybody manipulated anything. It was pretty fascinating. And genetic testing proved that the fingers, the torso, the body, the head, like all the skin that we could grab in different parts, and the toes, they were all connected to the same DNA, which if they were different body parts, that wouldn't happen. I found her to be the most interesting. So before Mexican Congress, there was a Peruvian hearing where the government had, again, they're always informed, but now they were like, okay, what's happening? So they had a Peruvian hearing where all the evidence from all the different countries was brought forward. The bodies were presented. What do you want to do with them? And there was some interest, but there was a lot of very upset antiquities people that were like, you're doing this on purpose and selling them on the black market and, whatever. The bodies ended up going to a university in Ica, and that is where the testing continued, was not involved at that point. Now, that was 2020. Cut to, all of a sudden, the smaller bodies have shown up in the Mexican Congress, and Jaime Maussan is involved again, bringing them forth. And I can't say that there was any genetic testing done. I don't know what Jaime did later. I just knew that they ended up in a university. So what I can say about the whole venture was that I found Maria to be quite interesting, because if she was manipulated, all of the doctors that looked at it, all of our data from the high-tech CAT scans to the tomography did not prove there was any manipulation with that body. And the funny thing is, that is the one thing that has not surfaced, right? So the smaller bodies that we personally didn't have any testing on, then surfaced up in Mexico. And I love Jaime. I think he's great, and he's very passionate about the UFO field. I just don't know if he jumps to conclusions a lot.
So clearly Jaime has a colourful history, and we know that some of his previous claims have been somewhat questionable. But as Melissa alludes to, these are different, and some fresh corroborating data that impressed their independent team. So first, the Mexican congressional hearing.
Scientists in Mexico pulling back the curtain on what they believe are aliens and put 2 of those corpses on display. Take a look. These small mummified specimens were unveiled at Mexico's first ever UFO hearing yesterday. Yeah, it looks like E.T. You're right. The alleged alien corpses were found in Peru. They're believed to be 700 to 1,800 years old. They only had 3 fingers and elongated heads. X-rays of the aliens were also shown, and experts say one of the bodies has eggs inside of it.
It's the queen of all evidence. If the DNA is showing us that they are not human beings and that there is nothing that looks like this in the world, we should take it as such.
The congressional hearing in Mexico didn't go well. The bodies stole the show, and no one really paid attention to the data presented. Instead, the event was shrouded in controversy as the Peruvian government distanced itself from Jaime's claims. We also saw that Ryan Graves was angered by the bodies stealing the show and turning this into a bit of a circus.
So you can do it somewhere else, or you cannot do it. So you do it whatever you want. Okay. So you don't want it? You want? No. Okay. You want to do it with him? Just do it with him? Wherever I can do it with all the media, but I don't want to do it in front of the bodies. Okay. I'll do it somewhere else. I will change. I don't want to do it. Just give me 1 second, please.
And there came the inevitable mockery.
I care about,
and they did, and here we are.
Oh, I love this. I love these. There were 2 of them. There was 2 of them.
Sure, you always need a spare.
Yeah.
It has just now been revealed that the aliens that Mexico showed us earlier in the week was cake the entire time.
Oh, for once in my life, let me...
Many saying that the bodies presented took away from the significant steps forward that the UAP, UFO, non-human intelligence community had pushed forward. One step forward, two steps back. However, after the congressional hearing and all of the controversy, Jaime seemed to have learned a lesson. He came back stronger, more evidence and data-driven. And as we saw from the Los Angeles press conference where new bodies were presented to the world, this was presented by scientists, specialist doctors, a forensic archaeologist, with less grandstanding and more data. So let's talk about these two new.
Okay, these are the bodies that we have found. Victoria, we made all the DNA samples from Victoria. It's a headless, and that's the reason we decided to take the samples from this body. That's Victoria. We call it that way. The headless figure or creature, pterodactyl creature. Then we have Alberto. Albert is right now at the University of Ica. It's different. Every single being has a different personality, has a different face, has a different body, exactly like humans. This is Albert. We made all the analysis, tomographies, everything we could. We did the DNA. Can you say this is a fake? Can you see this is the head of a llama? And then we have Josefina. Josephine, it's very important, it's a female, and was the first time that we found two things. One, that has eggs inside, and the second is that has a metal in the breast. This is Josephine. It was a big surprise when we took her to the. We thought that a fetus was inside. We never thought that eggs were inside. All of this can be analyzed. We need to take these bodies to the US, to a big university, big scientists, and they can investigate them. Okay, around the eggs, you can see irrigation. This is Luisa, another body that we have. You can see the eggs also, Luisa, and you can see how they are irrigated. That's impossible to fake. And we can see, we have seen embryos inside the eggs. Maria is a human-like body with a huge head, 3 fingers in every hand, and the foot. The fingers are long. We're going to have real experts in hand and neck and head after in this presentation. And they will tell you about this. This is so important. This changes history. This is Santiago, one of the bodies that we're going to present live from Lima today. You can see that it's very close like Maria. It's a 3-finger body with a large head, different eyes. We didn't touch this body. We didn't do anything to this body. It was delivered to us. Michael and Serena were there. They can tell you about this. And you will see later on live x-rays, live tomographies. and you will hear the experts talking about this. This changes everything. Can you imagine if they were living with all humans 1,000 or 2,000 years ago? Did we receive knowledge from them? Or is this a new species? But there is nothing before and nothing after. It's like they appear and disappear suddenly. That's very difficult in nature. In nature, you have developments. You will have something before, probably not after they were extinguished, but before, yes, you have to see slowly this process. Santiago is like a little kid. You will see the fingerprints. The fingerprints are different from humans. That is impossible to fake. You can see the x-rays here. It's like the head of a little boy, where there is separation between the different plates of the head. By the way, all this material is going to be available to anyone who wants to see it. We don't have anything to hide. If I were faking this, I wouldn't put it available to everyone. I would try to hide it here and there. No, it's open to everyone. Would you consider I would take the bodies to the Mexican Congress, putting in danger 50 years of career to present fake bodies? Think about that. Because what they've done to me is unacceptable. And I mean the Ministry of Culture. And I mean the media around the world. I'm surprised the media did not check the source of the Ministry of Culture. They would have realized that it was not the same body. Okay, this is Sebastian. This is another body that we're going to present today. It has different plates, one in the neck. It has some letters there. We have not been able to identify those letters. I think it's very important. This is very new. This was delivered to us, what, 2 months ago. Yes, we have not done DNA. Yes, we have not done the proper analysis, the carbon-14. We will. But we wanted to present this to the media and to the world. You can see the eyelashes in the eyes. They are so similar to us. Could they be hybrids? Could they have been created by somebody else? Could humans do that 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? I don't think so. You can see the eyelashes there very clearly, all the details. That's the plate in the back. And you can see letters there. The plate was completely covered with diatomea. Diatomea is where they were found, in a mine of diatomea. Diatomea is a phytoplankton plant or from the sea. It's fossilized and is used to desiccate. These bodies are desiccated, completely desiccated. They don't have any liquid or oil in their bodies. This is the plate. What is doing there? Why? So many questions. It's fascinating. Sorry, it's fascinating. Instead of opposing this, scientists should be, excited about this. This is something we have been looking for humanity for so many years. And it's in the hands of civil society. It's not in the hands of government to hide. It's open. Let's be happy about this. Okay, these are the bodies that have been found and presented until now. But there is so much more. Believe me, this is not the last press conference. This is not the last time that we are going to be presenting bodies. It's going to be more and more and more. Let's see how the world reacts to this. As I said, I've been humiliated, I've been discredited, I've been defamed, and my lawyer is going to speak about that. Okay. I hope you are enjoying this because this is pure history. You are part of history. There should be here thousands of media, thousands. This is so important. I have put everything in risk because this cannot be hid. We found this in 2017. I made different programs. And every time we found so many obstacles. That's why I had to take them to the Congress of Mexico, because David Grosh was talking about bodies remaining from the craft, from the crashes, and the government didn't want to present them. I thought it was the time to present them to the public. Sorry, I don't want to extend. There are more things to be said. We're going to have a live stream from the University of Ica, and we will have a live stream from a laboratory in Lima, and you will learn so much more about this. I want to introduce Dr. Rafael Berrocal. He's a top lawyer in Peru. He's going to talk about the legal gaps under the Constitution, the framework of the Constitution. He's a constitutionalist in Peru. He's a top man regarding laws. And he's going to talk now about these legal gaps on the anomalous bodies in the Constitution, not just of Peru, but around the world. Thank you very much.
This is called Sebastian, and this is called Santiago. We're estimating that Santiago is younger. This is Sebastian. But the knowledge of science, why have they been mutilated? The scientists have always said that these bodies, and we have an expert, we have a forensic expert, and we have a diagnosis, and they are revealing. So we have Dr. David Wills and Dr. Ricardo Nicama, one of the most important specialists and physicians. How are you? And these conditions are a little bit tight into place. Good afternoon. What is the diagnosis that you can obtain by seeing this body? What we can observe is where the tomography, in this tomography, is the eye socket is larger than the inside socket in both sockets. You can see the area of the zone is a nose that has very small openings. When you see the bone structure, that it has all the constitution of a skull that is very similar to a human skull. Here you can see the mandibula, what calls our attention are the metal plates. We're going to zoom towards the neck. This is similar to some implants that we have been able to find. These are implants over the body that we have found in other creatures. It had bone growth around it. In Cusco. So Sebastian, what it has is two impacts in its clavicular. So when we do this reconstruction, we can see two other metallic structures in the neck, in both collarbones. This is impressive. This definitely is something different. This is what we can underscore at the level of the eye sockets, as well as around the collarbones. Here we see the head and the neck. The fact that there are 3 fingers is something that has been deviated. So these, after 3 years of residency, what I can tell you is the manipulation that could happen in these fingers. These fingers are complete. They have not been manipulated. There's no sign that they have been manipulated. There's no question that these are tridactylous bodies. Here you can see the hands and the feet of Santiago, because we can see different age, that Santiago and the other body have different ages. So one would be between 7 and 9. So we have a perspective of our human paradigm. But there's no signs of having been like any fingers being removed. These images don't show any signs of having removed the fingers. The whole articulation is coherent with 3 fingers. So this is a correlation, an interbone correlation, and there's no evidence of any bones to have been removed, not even post-mortem. This is totally discarded. If they talk this way, it means that they have no idea of human anatomy, pre-mortem or post-mortem. Simply saying this is a mutilated body and this is another fraud is not true. We are experts in plastic surgery, and I'm the president of the Legal Medicine Peru, and they belong to the bodies that we're seeing. And now please show us, Sebastian, this part, because we thought initially that the neck had a lesion because of the metal on the neck. to put it together, the head with the body, but there's no evidence showing us that there was any problem there. But remember also that the tissue holds the body, so when it's dry, this that you see in the bodies loses the humidity because of the atomite earth that dried it. And it has an absence of the sternum. And also, I was surprised that ribs join towards the front, like in a circle.
Oh, wow. You're my friend. Oh, my friend. Oh. We made it. Oh. My friend. We made it.
The Three-Fingered Mummies of Peru. The story I'm going to tell you is even more wild than that title. While traveling through Peru to write my upcoming book, Enigmatic South America, Legends, Oddities, and Controversial History, I accidentally stumbled onto one of the craziest adventures of my life while attempting to chase the full story of these alleged mummies that were discovered in the deserts of Palpa, Peru. In September of 2023, the world was shocked when Mexico's Congress was presented what was said to be a mummified species of humanoid-looking beings. Experts and opinionists immediately dismissed them. Late-night show host cracked jokes. Navy pilot Ryan Graves, who was attending the hearing as a key witness to the UFO phenomenon, immediately distanced himself from the mummies and declared it a stunt. As months went by, the proponents of these alleged mummies continued to push their reasons as to why they believed they were real. This included doctors, surgeons, and other medical professionals in both Mexico and Peru. When I arrived in the country, I immediately set out on a mission to track down proponents so I could ask them questions to better understand their perspective of the story. Little did I know that my arrival in Peru came at a time when the story was about to reach its crescendo.
A ver, señor Mantilla, no sé cómo responderle, si a usted responderle como periodista o como ufólogo, en principio. Usted se la ha pasado durante 6 años mintiendo. Usted se la ha pasado siendo el payaso de Maussan. Así de simple, se lo digo en su cara. Estos son muñecos armados. Tanto como los que están en NAZCA, como la falsedad de los híbridos, de 3 dedos, el muñeco grande, eso es falso. El único que se cree ese cuento es usted. Y usted es un payaso. Gracias, señor Mantilla.
In this episode, you will see interviews I conducted with Jaime Maussan and Joas Mantilla, two of the main characters involved in introducing these alleged mummies to the Mexican Congress. It was Joas Mantilla who Flavio Estrada called a clown in that press conference clip you just saw earlier. Needless to say, the drama was very high when I arrived in Peru. I also talked to Edward Valenzuela, a member of the Incari Institute, and one of the very first people to analyze the first mummy known as Maria in 2016. I talked with Dr. Irvin Zuniga Almora, who performed a surgical analysis on one of the mummies.
How are you, Will? Very well here in Mexico City.
Hello, I'm Edward Valenzuela. I'm from Incari team.
Buenos días, mi nombre, como ya lo han dicho, es Irvin Zúñiga Almora. Soy médico, cirujano y cirujano dentista. Tengo 2 profesiones reconocidas acá en Perú.
Hola, mi nombre es Joyce Mantilla, soy periodista. Empecé en los medios de comunicación aquí en el Perú y en los principales medios de información desde el año 1990.
Soon after I arrived, I got word of a major press conference that was being advertised as a paradigm-shattering discovery, and that 2 new species of mummies would be revealed. The proponents believed that this announcement would once and for all settle the debate in their favor. While I waited for the press conference, I had heard that there was going to be a smaller presentation on the mummies in Ica. I was eager to learn more, so I hopped in a bus from Lima to Ica to try to make it on time. When I arrived, I soon found out that there was no presentation. It had been postponed at the last minute. I was standing at the door of a man named Edward Valenzuela, who I quickly recognized was one of the original members of the Inkari Institute that had been studying the original mummy named Maria since 2016. I asked Edward for an interview, which he kindly agreed to. While waiting on Edward in his living room, I picked up a magazine about the mummies. It was the larger mummy Maria that had first gotten people's attention. Edward and the Inkari Institute were approached by a man who knew the person that allegedly discovered the specimen in a cave between Palpa and NAZCA, Peru. Eventually, word got out about the creature, and famous names in the UFO community such as Jaime Maussan, who you will hear from later in this documentary, got involved. Gaia eventually sent a team down to investigate, which included DNA samples that were taken, which came back with very strange results, which the proponents interpreted as proving that this mummy was a hybrid species.
Hello, I'm Edward Valenzuela. I'm from Inkari team from Cusco. Now I live in Ica. I study NAZCA Mummies from 60 years. Yo conocí el caso del 2016 cuando una persona nos trajo unos pequeños cuerpos para investigar. Quería saber qué eran, y esta persona nos dijo que había encontrado estos cuerpos en la zona de Tacna, pero los cuerpos no nos llamaron la atención porque eran pequeños cuerpos. Lo que más nos llamó la atención fue la historia que nos contó, que el lugar donde él había encontrado habían cuerpos más grandes, había una momia de tamaño de un humano, habían órganos, habían otros cuerpos más pequeños, estaban dentro de un cofre, etcétera, toda una historia. Entonces nosotros decidimos a partir de ese momento, el 2016, investigar el caso y ver quién estaba detrás de esto, porque la persona que trajo era un intermediario. Es así que vinimos a toda la zona NAZCA Palpa y descubrimos que quien estaba detrás de todo esto era Leandro Benedicto Rivera, conocido como Mario.
Remember that name, Leandro, who goes by Mario. Mario is a mysterious man who I unsuccessfully tried to track down multiple times while visiting Palpa. I was told that the only way Mario would speak with me is if I offered him some money. We're going to talk more about Mario in the upcoming interviews throughout this video.
Logramos encontrarlo, logramos convencerlo de que nos muestre algunos cuerpos, recuperamos algunos cuerpos, extrajimos las pruebas y en base a eso... y en base a eso es que hicimos las primeras investigaciones. Ahora, sí creo que son falsos o reales. Después de casi más de ya 10 años de investigación, yo, de acuerdo a los resultados que se han encontrado, yo sigo ratificando de que estamos ante cuerpos reales. El gobierno peruano desde un inicio ha estado en contra de esta investigación y ha afirmado que todos estos son falsos, son fakes. Pero el gobierno peruano nunca se ha tomado la molestia de investigar como lo hemos hecho nosotros. El gobierno peruano ha designado algunos forenses, 2 personas específicamente, para que revisen estos cuerpos, pero estos representantes del gobierno peruano nunca, hasta ahora, en más de 10 años, nunca han presentado una prueba de carbono 14, nunca han presentado una prueba de ADN, nunca han hecho exámenes de piel, solo han afirmado de que es falso, simplemente por el hecho de ver los cuerpos y por comparar estos cuerpos. El grave error que tienen ellos es que comparan estos cuerpos con el cuerpo humano.
So Edward's talking about these dolls that were confiscated at the airport and analyzed by the Ministry of Culture back in January and announced to be fakes. What Edward and the proponents are saying is that, of course, these are fakes, that they were created by a man from Palpa who admits that they're fakes, and that this man says they're an artistic expression, and that he was trying to sell them in Mexico as souvenirs. The grievance that Edward and the proponents seem to have is that the Ministry of Culture has never taken the time to go and study the actual mummies in Ica, which they say are completely different than these dolls.
Primero que me baso en lo que la ciencia está hasta ahora determinando. Tenemos prueba de... Primero hay que determinar los cuerpos. Se están investigando exactamente el cuerpo de María, una momia de aproximadamente 1,65 m, humanoide. Estamos hablando de Guaguita, que es un bebé. Estamos hablando de Albert, un ser reptiliano. Y estamos hablando de Victoria, un ser que está en posición sentada y sin cabeza. Esos son los 4 cuerpos que se están investigando. De esos 4 cuerpos es que se ha extraído ADN, carbono 14, se ha hecho tomografías y todo lo demás. Ahora, hay otros cuerpos más que aparecieron, pero esos otros cuerpos no los hemos investigado nosotros. Como un falsificador, como Mario, podría hacer este tipo de imitación. Recientemente en el congreso que se ha realizado en México han demostrado que María tiene 4 diferentes, está conformado por 4 genomas diferentes: Homo sapiens, chimpancé, bonobo, que es una especie de chimpancé, y un ADN desconocido. Entonces, ¿de dónde Mario sacaría toda esta información para ponerla en un cuerpo? Es muy difícil de hacer. La otra prueba es que el carbono 14 también nos determina de que estamos ante cuerpos que tienen más de 1000 años de antigüedad. Entonces, igual como un huaquero pudo haber conseguido piezas de más de 1000 años de antigüedad para armar un cuerpo. Y tercero, y creo que la prueba esta de la piel ha sido también interesante, porque se habló mucho que estos cuerpos estaban cubiertos por una especie de goma, de amalgama, que los habían puesto como papel, y definitivamente no corresponde a ninguno de estos, porque la piel ha presentado queratinización, que solamente se da en especies que han vivido. No se puede hacer eso. Y encima hay un cuarto elemento, que estos cuerpos, algunos de ellos tienen unas especies de implantes metálicos. Y estos implantes, curiosamente, tienen unas extrañas aleaciones que no era posible hacerlos hace 1000 años atrás. Se puede hacer ahora, pero con mucha tecnología. Entonces, creo que todos estos elementos me hacen a mí creer que estamos ante un misterio y ante cuerpos que podrían ser reales.
To summarize what Edward just said, he explained that the mummy Maria was found to have 4 different genomes: human, chimpanzee, bonobo, and an unknown strain, leading him and others to believe that this is a hybrid creature. Furthermore, he explains that the carbon-14 dating of the creature proves that it's over 1,000 years old. As for the metallic pieces that were discovered inside one of the mummies, there's a dental surgeon named Dr. Irvin Zuniga Amora that extracted that piece out of the chest of one of the specimens. It had fused to the soft tissue and bone of the mummy, which he believed demonstrated that the creature had been alive whenever this was placed inside of it. I was able to interview Dr. Zuniga Amora, and as you will see here, the metallic bone was not the only interesting thing that he uncovered.
Buenos días, mi nombre, como ya lo han dicho, es Irvin Zúñiga Almora. Soy médico, cirujano y cirujano dentista. Tengo 2 profesiones reconocidas acá en Perú. Me involucré en el estudio de las momias desde el 2019, que las momias fueron, incluso antes de que fueran llevadas a la universidad, cuando en el 2018, en diciembre, hacen un evento en el Congreso de la República de Perú, ¿no?, donde invitan a científicos que habían estado haciendo estudios de estos especímenes encontrados y que estaban todavía en ese entonces en poder de la ONG INCARI, ¿no? En agosto del 2019 es pasado a custodia de la universidad para continuar las investigaciones. Desde esa fecha es que yo me involucro en el estudio de estos especímenes.
There's so many peculiar things about your analysis. One of the more shocking ones was these photos of what appeared to be some type of egg or multiple eggs, 3 in this case right here in this photo. And once again, would just really appreciate your analysis on what you were seeing whenever you saw these scans.
Sí, claro. A ver, de los especímenes que tiene en su poder la Universidad Nacional San Luis Gonzaga de Ica, tiene uno de estos especímenes de tamaño de 60 centímetros, ¿no? Que aparentemente tenía huevos dentro de la cavidad abdominal, lo que correspondería a la cavidad abdominal. En los estudios preliminares, en las radiografías, revelaron que eran unos objetos radioopacos muy densos que podrían ser huevos. Ante esto, la opinión de los detractores que están en contra de la investigación de estos especímenes decían que eso eran piedras que se habían puesto dentro de estos especímenes para aparentar que estaban embarazadas, en un periodo de gestación. Entonces, fuera de la radiografía, quisimos hacer un estudio mínimamente invasivo, ¿no? Sin necesidad de cortar y extirpar lo que había ahí adentro. Entonces, lo que hicimos fue hacer una toma de muestra con un equipo de perforación de hueso. ¿Ya? Este equipo se utiliza en implantología dental. En el rubro de la odontología yo me dedico más a la implantología dental. Entonces, con todo mi equipo, quisimos arriesgarnos a hacer esta toma de muestras en este espécimen, sabiendo que si eran piedras, el equipo no iba a funcionar porque no tiene la potencia suficiente como para perforar una piedra y podía quebrarse el instrumento. Pero cuando empezamos a hacer la perforación, hubo una mínima resistencia que en mi experiencia yo la comparo a la resistencia que tiene un hueso corticalizado, un hueso duro, ¿no? Donde tienen más cantidad de cortical. Y pasando esa resistencia pude sentir ya que iba disminuyendo y al centro se iba haciendo menos denso, ya ofrecía menos resistencia. Cuando sacamos muestras de esa parte, lo juntamos en un recipiente estéril para dárselo a la Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería del Perú, que está en Lima. Después sacamos muestras de otro espacio donde también, este espécimen que ustedes están viendo ahí en la imagen, que son imágenes de una tomografía, tiene 3 objetos dentro de su vientre. Entonces, 2 de estos objetos fue los que tomamos muestras. En el siguiente objeto, cuando hice la perforación, ya no había tanta resistencia como en el primero. ¿Ya? Eso me indicaba a mí que las densidades de estas de acá eran distintas. Entonces tampoco, no creo, bueno, no sé, no conozco mucho de piedras, no creo que haya piedras de distintas densidades, creo que todas son duras, pero lo que sacamos de ahí fue un polvillo y ambas fueron entregadas a la Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería para sus estudios correspondientes, lo cual después del tiempo que ellos evaluaron nos dijeran que era material orgánico. Entonces, por lo tanto, estaba descartada la teoría de que eran piedras, ¿no? Entonces, es material orgánico, que puede ser pues, una especie de huevos que hayan tenido estos especímenes. Lo que vemos acá en estas imágenes es justamente ese espécimen que tiene esos objetos en el vientre, que aparentemente son huevos, ¿no? También tienen una especie de un metal sobrepuesto en la parte del tórax, ¿no? En la parte superior del tórax. Entonces nos intrigaba saber cuál era la composición de esos metales y justamente con los ingenieros de la Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería del Perú fue que también sacamos la muestra de una parte de este metal para que ellos hagan su estudio. Al principio tomamos una muestra pequeña de metal, solamente lo que nosotros acá llamamos virutas, que es como un polvillo del raspado de ese metal, pero posteriormente nos solicitaron una muestra más grande, porque era insuficiente la cantidad que habían tomado para determinar cosas que ellos todavía no estaban tan seguros. Entonces, en la segunda fase es que yo hago una toma de muestra de ese metal mucho más grande, utilizando también herramientas de alta velocidad para el corte, un corte fino de esos metales. Yo particularmente pensaba que estos metales estaban como sobrepuestos en la piel de estos especímenes, ¿no? Y que con el polvillo se había quedado, de repente, de alguna forma, pues, sobrepuesto ahí y fijado, ¿no? No me imaginaba que podía haber una fusión de la cara interna de este metal con la piel de este espécimen, ¿no? Lo que nosotros llamamos epitelio. Entonces, al momento de querer sacar, había una resistencia y bueno, yo tuve que tirar un poco más fuerte para retirar ese metal que estábamos cortando. Y cuando por fin retiro el metal, me doy cuenta de que en la cara interna había arrastrado conjuntamente con el metal epitelio, o sea, tejido epitelial y tejido muscular, lo que está señalado con las flechas azules. Lo que está señalado con la flecha roja es el espacio que quedó después de arrancar prácticamente este pedazo de metal cortado. Y esto yo lo comparé con el proceso de implantación dental en la boca del ser humano, donde se coloca un metal, en este caso en la mayoría es titanio, ¿ya? Pero con un tratamiento sobre la superficie de ese metal que le hace más la biocompatibilidad también del titanio, hace que termine fusionándose con el hueso humano, ¿no? Y eso a través, es una fusión celular. Entonces, lo mismo aparentemente está pasando con estas placas metálicas que tienen estos especímenes. Hay una fusión celular, puede ser a nivel de tejido epitelial, pero se ve que hay una fusión celular. Ahora, como yo explicaba, para que pase esto, el organismo tiene que estar vivo para poder recepcionar un objeto que es ajeno a su cuerpo, pero que llegue finalmente a fusionarse a nivel celular.
Just to add a little bit of clarity, the photo on the far right is an example Dr. Zuniga Amora used from his dental practice to compare it to the fused tissue on the metal that was extracted from the creature. I came into this entire thing skeptical, and I still am if I'm being honest with you. But after hearing Dr. Zuniga Amora, a licensed surgeon from Peru, my mind started to ponder the possibilities. The alleged eggs were in fact not stones. The metallic object had fused to the soft tissue of whatever this creature was while it was still alive. Despite my skepticism, how could myself or anyone else ignore that? This conversation made me a little more willing to open my mind to the unimaginable. I wanted to go to the desert and see the landscape surrounding the area and immerse myself among the ancient geoglyphs and petroglyphs. Would they provide any clues? Edward Valenzuela offered to show me some sites that he believed were expressions from the ancients of an extraterrestrial or perhaps cryptoterrestrial presence that they maybe had witnessed during their time. As we drove through the desert, there were petroglyphs on both sides of the road. Edward believed that these might have been UFOs that were shooting beams of light or energy down to Earth. This geoglyph could be interpreted in a number of ways. Is it a UFO taking off from Earth? Or perhaps just a representation of a setting or rising sun? Our last and most prized stop would be a large petroglyph field, where somewhere hidden within the boulders of the mountain rested an ancient depiction of a three-fingered humanoid similar to the appendages of the alleged mummies in question. We struggled for hours looking for this thing, but we did get to enjoy several other interesting petroglyphs along the way.
Oh wow. You're my friend. Oh, my friend. Oh.
We made it.
Oh.
The next day, while flying over the NAZCA lines and pondering their meaning and reason for being, I knew I could not complete my investigation without attempting to speak to two of the main proponents of this entire story, The two people who have arguably brought the most media attention to the subject are Jaime Maussan, who has his own TV show with over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and Josefina, a Peruvian reporter and investigator that was helping set up the press conference for the upcoming announcement. Both of these gentlemen had been accused by the Ministry of Culture of helping perpetuate what they had called a fraud. During the Ministry of Culture's press conference, where they declared this entire thing a hoax, it was Josefina who challenged the institution for their lack of scientific research on the mummies that were being held at Ica University.
Diga usted, señor Estrada, lo que usted ha analizado acá es idéntico a lo que se ha analizado en la Universidad de Ica y que tiene una tonelada de evidencia científica, de forenses, de bioinformática, de análisis que se han hecho en todo el mundo. ¿Es lo mismo?
A ver, señor Mantilla, no sé cómo responderle, si a usted responderle como periodista o como ufólogo, en principio. Usted se la ha pasado durante 6 años mintiendo. Usted se la ha pasado siendo el payaso de Maussan. Así de simple, se lo digo en su cara. Estos son muñecos armados. Tanto como los que están en Ica, como la falsedad de los híbridos, de 3 dedos, el muñeco grande, eso es falso. El único que se cree ese cuento es usted. Y usted es un payaso. Gracias, señor Mantilla.
I reached out to Flavio Estrada, the man from the Ministry of Culture who got into the argument with Josefina. He promptly replied and politely directed me to a media request channel in order to get the proper permission to speak with him. As I was talking to the representatives of the Ministry of Culture, I got the vibes that I was indeed going to get granted permission to speak with him. Right as things were looking like they were going to move forward, I received a message that informed me that my request had been denied.
No solamente no van a hablar con los medios independientes, sino con cualquier medio de comunicación que quiera cuestionar su incapacidad y su falta de criterio debido a que no han querido ir a investigar las momias. Están a unos kilómetros de aquí, nada más. Pero en lugar de eso, cogen unas artesanías y unos muñecos que incautan en el aeropuerto y los utilizan como si esos fueran los cuerpos que están en la Universidad de Ica. Tienen 7 años tratando de incautar las momias, tratando de llevárselas, pero no para investigarlas. Si les quisieran investigar verdaderamente, ya se habrían asociado con los profesores de la Universidad de Ica para poder tener una conclusión, un estudio y evidencias que puedan mostrar. Pero, como te lo dije hace un rato, si tú como ministerio sabes que las pruebas están en la Universidad de Ica, si sabes que las respuestas están ahí y no vas por ellas, es porque no te interesan las respuestas. No te interesan porque lo único que quieres es desaparecer los cuerpos, desaparecer la investigación, que la gente no se entere y mantener las cosas como están. ¿Por qué? Porque los principales científicos se adelantaron sin ninguna investigación a decir que todo esto era falso, que todo esto era mentira y que era un fraude, algo que no lo pueden demostrar porque se niegan a investigar. Y nosotros estamos demostrándole todo lo contrario, que hay mucho que investigar, que los cuerpos son auténticos, que los cuerpos son reales, que no han sido manipulados y que tienen ADNs que no existen en las bibliotecas genéticas del mundo.
I remember it was around October 2016 when I saw some videos and photos in YouTube around some of these creatures. I saw the big hands. I saw some other bodies that didn't attract my attention. I thought everything was a hoax. Until one day, one of my colleagues, Fernando Correa, attracted my attention again to the bodies, and I said, Fernando, they look like a hoax. And they were not a hoax. They were the little bodies that were assembled, but probably 1,000 years ago. Okay, the small bodies that Paul Ronceros took to the Minister of Culture, and they decided that they were assembled. Yeah, we saw that from the very beginning. But when Fernando attracted my attention, he asked me to speak to Thierry Yamin. And I called him that morning, and I made an interview for my internet show. I talked to the people of Gaia, Gaia.com. I sent them some of the pictures and photographs that Thierry gave me. And they say, yeah, please go there and we will help you with the investment to take a scientist and other people there. And then it's when I found finally the bodies that I presented in the Mexican Congress in Cusco, in the Inca Institute. And I became very excited because my scientist, Jose Salce, and there were others from Peru and from Russia, all of them said that the creatures were real because we took these creatures to the X-rays in Cusco. And when we got these X-rays, we saw them as real. It was very clear that these bodies were not assembled. I had very good experts with me. And the first thing that really excited us was that we found eggs inside of one of these bodies. And we thought that was incredible, that it couldn't be a hoax. And then is when we decided to really get involved in this. At that moment, then we decided to go to Palpa, and we met Mario, the man who found these bodies. At that time, we called him Mario. Now we know that his real name is Leandro Benedicto Rivera. And he presented us the big body, Maria, that is probably still the star of this finding. At the very beginning, the people from Gaia didn't know what to think about this because you saw it had a very large head, very big eyes, the fingers, the 3 long fingers in every hand, 3 long fingers in every foot. And it was very clear that was something that was not completely human.
The most intriguing criticism of the mummies to me is that the back of a llama skull looks very similar to the face of the mummies. A Peruvian paleontologist named Dr. Rodolfo Salsas-Gismondi provided this video and gave me permission to use it for my documentary. It does look strikingly similar to the facial structure of the mummies, and in my opinion it's the best physical evidence that skeptics have put forward so far that shows that these might have been manufactured.
There's so many twists and turns in this story, right? It's been almost 8 years now since this started. One of the twists and turns that I've noticed as I've researched this, Jaime, I believe it was 2021, a paper came out that explained that they thought that Josefina's head was made of a llama skull. But then in recent years, one of the authors of that paper, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the authors of that paper, Dr. Jose de la Cruz Rios, has actually came out and he now believes they're authentic. Is that true? Can you speak about that original claim of the llama head?
Yeah, well, it was a surprise because Jose de la Cruz Rios was there from the very first trip. He's a biologist. He considered that to be real. And then he got involved with some specialists from other countries. And they wrote this paper. And I think he signed the paper, but I don't think he had agreed that this head was from a llama or alpaca or wherever. But he signed the paper. It was a surprise to me because I said, Jose, did you sign this? Yes, but I was wrong. And then he put his position clear that he didn't believe this was a llama. The people that say that this was a llama had still to assemble a full body without glue, without any attachments, and they have to make it look organic. They haven't done that.
In the last few questions I'd like to ask you are about Mario. And tell me again his first name. We used to think it was
Leandro Benedicto Rivera.
Leandro. Have you met Leandro? And is there any indication that he would have the technical abilities to do something like this, right? I've done my research on this, and there's so many people that are saying these are authentic. This is why. And I'm trying to wrap my head around if it's possible at all that this man, Leandro, that lives out in Palpa, Peru, a small village, that he would have this technical ability to put these together. Can you speak on that, please?
He found between heads, hands, and bodies more than 100. More than 100, probably 150. He made all of that? How? I mean, would be very crazy, my friend. If you can assemble a hand like the one that Maria has, you would be the best expert in the world to do it. This man, I don't want to how can I say, aggressive to him, but his education is limited. He never almost went to school. And you are telling me that this man did all of this? He planned all this hoax? I think it's I don't know, it's crazy to think that.
No es posible. O sea, lo que no puede hacer toda la humanidad, toda su ciencia y todos los recursos disponibles del planeta no les permite hacer un ser como María. ¿Cómo lo va a lograr? Imagínense un poblador humilde y modesto del desierto de Palpa y Nazca, con unos serruchos, con unos hilos y agujas y con pegamento. Te saldría distintos ADNs de todas las piezas que integran el monstruo. Pero no, María es una creación genética. Estamos ante un hallazgo increíble, único, que tiene que ser demostrado de todas las formas posibles. Ya hemos dado la pauta, hemos dado los resultados, junto con el Instituto Incari, Tercer Milenio y Gaia.com. Hemos mostrado al mundo los resultados del ADN y que no quieran aceptarlos es una cuestión que escapa a nuestro criterio, que no se han seguido los protocolos de la ciencia. Vengan entonces a investigar, háganlos ustedes entonces. Ustedes que son científicos, vengan a investigar qué es lo que deberían hacer. No hacer cartas, comunicados. Ese no es trabajo de los científicos. Los trabajos de los científicos, como los periodistas, es investigar, mostrarte la evidencia.
One of the most credentialed professionals involved with analyzing these mummies has been Dr. Jose de Jesus Salce Benitez, a forensic pathologist and former director of the Mexican Navy Scientific Institute for Health. His analysis was and still is to this day that they are real, and apparently he has received some professional backlash, according to Jaime Maussan.
Well, I can tell you something. He was from the Navy. It seems that his relation to this case affected his position in the Navy. He is leaving the Navy, but he has a master's degree in forensic science. He's a surgeon. He has been master teacher of many scientists in the Navy. He was director of 42 hospitals in the Navy. At one moment, he was the forensic director in the Navy. It's a man. It's really bright. It's an incredible man. He's very, very courageous. Even though that this has affected him in his professional life, he continues to participate. He believes in the truth, and he's willing to go until the end.
It's worth mentioning that Maussan has been wrong before when it comes to speculating on mummified bodies. According to theskepticalenquirer.org, in 2015 a photo emerged online of a mummified Native American child that many people, including Maussan, believed was evidence of an alien body retrieved from the Roswell crash. According to Mick West, a UFO skeptic, Dr. Jose de Jesus Salsa Benitez worked with Maussan to analyze the photo. To be fair, this story is something completely different, as we are dealing with the analysis of something physical and in person, and not a photograph. Mistakes do happen, but this is definitely worth mentioning, especially considering how quick everyone was to jump to conclusions based off of one single photograph. As March 12th approaches, it appears that the press conference, which has been delayed a number of times, is going to be live streamed to various parts of the world. Michael Mazzola, a filmmaker who describes himself as an alien rights activist and the director of Unacknowledged, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and The Lost Century, seems to be involved in breaking the story of these new mummies and has dropped some hints as to what we should expect to see on Tuesday at the upcoming press conference.
Well, before I jump, I'd like to just share that I just got back from Peru, where I was investigating the infamous, notorious Nazca alien mummies that went viral a few months ago when Jaime Maussan brought the two quote-unquote dead aliens in front of the Mexican Congress, and everybody had a good laugh. And if you Google this, there's literally 100 articles saying, oh no, Peruvian officials have confiscated these. They're fake. They're chicken bones and glue. You'll see pictures of two little beings that look like the ones that Jaime presented to Congress, but they're wearing, dresses and sombreros. It looks really stupid. So I've been down there with my team. We went to Mexico. We went to Peru over the last couple months, and we've been meeting with the scientists, the forensic scientists, really high-level people in these countries who've been examining these things. And there is a massive fraud that has happened here. But it's not Jaime Maussan who is committing the fraud. It's the Peruvian government. So these things are absolutely real. The Peruvian officials seized two dolls that were made by a guy named Manuel, who we tracked down. He made two fake ones that he was going to sell to tourists. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture seized these at the airport. He told them, oh no, these are fake ones. These are works of art that I made. And they ignored that. Then they lied to the world and said these were the same beings that Jaime Maussan presented to the Mexican Congress. And by the way, nothing to see here, folks. It's just chicken bones and glue. Well, Jaime invited me down to Peru to see the new bodies. If you click onto my profile, I posted a couple articles. We've leaked a few photos of these new bodies. They're absolutely incredible. I got to film these scientists doing X-rays, CT scans, biopsies. The original two bodies that went viral have had 12 independent DNA analyses done on them. They've got 30% unknown DNA. They have clear indications of being genetically engineered, and they are 1,000 years old. So while we can't claim that they are extraterrestrial, who had the ability to do genetic engineering 1,000 years ago? So we're doing a press conference.
But yeah, what about the NAZCA mummies? What are these guys? For those of you who haven't been following the story, or those who want to go over the research in more detail, and again, I have put together basically a clip show of some of the videos that I've made on the NAZCA mummies, going over the research that's been done on these amazing specimens. We've got alien bodies, y'all. We've got alien bodies. This is UFO disclosure. But for those of you who aren't sold on that, I hope you will, check out this video to see the research that has been done, so you can see, yeah, these aren't dolls. These aren't ritual dolls or hoaxes or whatever. These are authentic specimens. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of the researchers, or the doctors and the scientists, dozens of them. I think there's 40 of them or so that have looked at these amazing bodies and determined they are authentic, genuine specimens. So, they were once living beings, put it that way. Well, are they aliens? Are they hybrids? You know, who knows? I tend to think they're more hybrids, at least some of them. But anyway, enough from me, enough preamble. Let's go right to the research. Okay, here's what Jaime Maussan had to say. I'm muting it because there's music playing. And here is the unveiling of the mummies. I think that's really interesting that they would choose this as the evidence. I was really hoping for something new, but instead we get these old mummies. But maybe there has been new analysis done.
The alien bodies that we're seeing were actually recovered in a mine in Peru. They were found in 2017 between Palpa and Nazca. They are not a part of our evolutionary line, and they've been carbon dated to about 1,000 years old. The Mexican government says they are not mummies, the bodies are fully intact, and they have been thoroughly researched. The expansive research done by the government on the alien bodies included X-rays, digital tomography, carbon-14, forensic analysis, biological analysis, genetic analysis, biological computer analysis, analysis of metallic implants, spectrometry, histology, physical analysis, and more. With some very interesting organizations involved in the research, including Abraxas, Lockheed University, and Harrisburg University. And the Mexican government is saying that when they say fully intact, these bodies, they mean fully intact. The bodies are fully preserved, including all internal organs and all DNA that they have put through extreme analysis. They have literally all the information. We know what these extraterrestrials are made of. I wonder if we're in communication with them as well.
Okay, let's go to Reddit. A very helpful Redditor translated what the forensic specialist said about the bodies. It is an honor for me to present on such a high platform the results of my analyses derived from the study of the anatomy of these non-human bodies. As a forensic doctor in collaboration with the biologist Jose de la Cruz Rios, and based on the results of various scientific evidence, such as X-rays, computed tomography, three-dimensional reconstructions, macroscopic and microscopic analysis, histology, carbon-14, etc., I can affirm that these bodies are not related to human beings. For this purpose, I will start with a description of the images that we'll see next. They are bodies of approximately 60 centimeters long, covered by a white powder that, through electron microscopy, we identify as diatom powder, which allows the desiccation of the bodies as well as the absence of the generation of bacteria, fungi, and cadaveric fauna. The presence of this dust allows the perfect conservation by desiccation of these bodies, causing a natural conservation process over time, which we were able to calculate by applying the carbon-14 test, which indicated and dated an average of 1,000 years old. This makes the place where these bodies were found an ideal place for their conservation and preservation by whoever or those who deposited them at this site in Peru. Entering the topic of anatomy, we can see that they have a humanoid structure that consists of a head, trunk, abdomen, and limbs, which end in tridactyl hands and feet. The bone structure of the entire skeleton shows us perfect harmony and agreement between the joints. The final part of each bone fits perfectly with the bone that allows it, and the wear of these is also observed due to the movement of the specimen's own biomechanics, being very resistant bones, but very light, strong, but like those of the birds. The head is an element of particular interest since it is large in its proportions compared to the body. However, it is a pneumatized skull, that is, with spaces that allow it to be very light but rigid and resistant. with a large intracranial cavity, which evidence that it has, the translation is a little wonky here, which evidence that it was a container for very large brain or neurological material. Likewise, we see that the spaces in the eye orbits are very large in size, which would allow a very wide stereoscopic vision for this specimen. It has very small nostrils and an oral cavity that, due to its jaw joint and absence of teeth, allows us to determine that its nutrition was by swallowing and not by chewing. Here is one of the most outstanding and relevant peculiarities, that they do not have carpal and tarsal bones. The phalanges are direct to the bones of the arm and forearm, in addition to ending in a kind of nail bed for the nail. In that observation of microscopes, we found fingerprints. This would be impossible to replicate. These fingerprints are of particular interest since most specimens on this planet have deep or circular footprints, and the fingerprints of these specimens are completely straight and horizontally linear. Another peculiarity is that some of these bodies have metal implants that are perfectly attached within the skin and towards the surface, making it a very impressive biofunctional fusion. These implants are the alloy of various metals, which among osmium and cadmium stand out, which are currently used for satellite telecommunications. Finally, I will point out the DNA analysis. After having been compared with more than 1 million registered species, we found that there is a significant difference between what is known in these bodies. These studies were carried out in various high-level institutions, both national and international, and the results gave evidence that 70% of the genetic material coincides with what is known, but there is a difference of 30%. What is the relevance of this? This would indicate that the difference found of more than 30% is something totally outside the parameter of what is expected, is foreign to what is described and known at this moment by human beings. In conclusion, and for all the above, we can say that these bodies are from a non-human species that has irrefutable differences with what is described in the biology and taxonomy of the Darwinian species evolution tree, without a common or traceable predecessor, or without a descent in evolution still described. I can affirm that these bodies are 100% real, organic and biological, that at the time they had life and are irrefutable evidence in themselves. We are facing the paradigm of describing a new species, or the opportunity to accept that there has been contact with other non-human beings that were drawn and pointed out in the past in various cultures throughout the world, such as Peru, Egypt, and Mexico, and that today we can accept their existence among and with us. Thank you very much. Okay, I just finished watching the Mexican UFO hearing, and we've got to talk about it. Oh, and there's a bonus after I talk about the NAZCA mummies and also Maria. That's right, because we're also going to talk about Maria. That was one of the things that they talked about toward the end, was this analysis of the larger mummy known as Maria. I think there may be a few of them, but Maria is really interesting. She doesn't appear to be human. We don't know, I don't want to say that definitively yet. Maybe she has a whole series of crazy mutations, but so her jawbone protruded. She apparently had big bulging eyes. Of course, she's got 3 fingers. She just doesn't make a lot of sense. Her arms are more gorilla-like. She doesn't appear to have been able to stand in the way that we do. One of the researchers called her a hybrid, and he says he couldn't explain how a hybrid could exist 1,000 years ago. So what does he mean by that? Is he talking about an alien-human hybrid or a human gorilla reptile hybrid? What are we talking about with Maria? What is she? What are these beings, these larger beings, these smaller beings? Are they related to each other? We don't know. They've both got 3 fingers and they're found in the same area, so it makes me think they're somehow related, even though they look very different otherwise and they're totally different sizes. Are they similar in that they're both hybrids, possibly? Could that be a thing? I don't know, but I'll talk about a little bit of the analysis that was done on the smaller mummies. Again, I'm going to go into more detail about this later. It was a fascinating presentation by these researchers, and hats off to them and Jaime Maussan for getting this information to the public. And I really hope that more researchers and analysts get on board with this outside of South America and Mexico and start talking about this in the West and in the wider world, because this is huge. This could be a game changer, guys. This could be disclosure. So what did we find out about the smaller bodies? Well, among other things, the eggs look like they might actually be eggs, because there was, one a debunking idea that was thrown around that they could be stones placed in there to look like eggs. So an analysis was done on them to see if they could be stones and they were actually drilled into. And I kind of hate to see these bodies, chipped away at bit by bit for these tests. I know that has to be done, but it is such a shame. Anyway, so they were able to find that the eggs, or whatever they are, in one of the beings had different densities, which the researcher, my impression was the researcher didn't think that would be expected of a stone. So it appears that they may actually indeed be eggs. So that was really interesting. They also talked about the metal implant in that particular being, and that it had fused to the bone. And the impression I got was that we don't really have the technology to do exactly what that did, even today. But at the very least, if it fused to the bone, indicating that the being was alive when this was done and had a very high technical ability, which didn't seem possible based on what we know from the people at the time. So this was a living being. It wasn't a cobbled together doll made of dead body parts. It was a living being. And that implant, pretty much conclusively proves that. So really, really interesting. And also, of course, the CAT scan, seems to indicate that these were intact beings, not cobbled together dolls or, relics for some ceremonial purpose. So, those are some of the takeaways from, the last portion of the hearing. And I'll have a much more detailed analysis later, probably a series of breakdowns on the fascinating information presented at the hearing. But I did want to go over a couple of additional things. This is an interesting video about the beings that talks about how the beings appear to have hollow bones. And this is, from a scan, indicating they are more reptilian or bird-like. The hypothesis from this video is that they are more reptilian. And, that is fascinating. If they were reptilian humanoids of some sort with a high technology, could they have been dinosaurs or could they have been terrestrial beings that evolved naturally on this planet and not necessarily alien? If so, if they were an intelligent humanoid on this planet, what happened to them? Are they crypto-terrestrials? Are they ultra-terrestrials? Are they extraterrestrials? We just don't know. But fascinating nonetheless. Either way, this is a game changer. I mean, this is going to, if this is taken seriously and more widely accepted, this is going to change science and history as we know it. This is just insane. This is insane. And there was some additional stuff. Let's see. Where's Jaime? Where'd Jaime go? Jaime, there we go. At this time, the resolution by the rector and professors of the National University of the ICA of Peru has been made known to the world. that the biological evidence from NAZCA presented are non-human beings of unknown origin. That's right. The National University of the ICA of Peru, the rector and the professors are saying definitively that these are non-human beings of unknown origin. And based on what I'm seeing, that's bang on. These are not humans. They were at one point live beings with a high technology level that doesn't seem possible from that period. Are they ETs? Are they some sort of crypto-terrestrial? Again, it's impossible to say at this point. At least for me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And there was one more additional thing. At this time, Congressman Sergio Gutierrez Luna announces FANI reform. I'm not familiar with FANI. I know, right? Reform and announces FANI reform initiatives in that his records will not be classified. This is from Jaime, so I'm assuming that some reports about these beings will be made known to the public. Again, I'm going to go over this a lot more in the days to come. There's a lot to break down here, but this, I think that this hearing has convinced me conclusively that these were live beings. They were non-human. They were apparently revered or thought well of by the humans at the time, and that we don't know what their origin is. Does that mean they're alien? No, it doesn't. But they're nothing that we know of. So yeah, let me know what you think they are in the comments below. So I talked a bit about some of the results yesterday. So let's go over some of the things that I didn't go over. Well, one researcher examined the eggs. And he is convinced that there is this soft tissue showing a vascular structure going into the eggs, showing that they were real eggs, and that they were genuine reptilian or bird-like eggs kept inside this female specimen, this female body. They weren't stones or anything else. That was one of the debunking ideas that was thrown around, was that they were stones inserted into these bodies to make it look like eggs, as if that made any sense at all. Why would the ancient people of NAZCA do that? That doesn't make any sense. But whatever, that was one of the debunking theories. In this analysis, pretty well conclusively proves that no, these were real eggs inside these living beings, performing the way that eggs do inside living beings. So very, very interesting. And there's a lot more about the eggs. For example, in this analysis that was done, a scan showing what looks like a fetus inside this egg. So again, these were genuine eggs. And what is more, we have even more evidence of these eggs and their place, and these beings' place in the human culture of the time, because apparently these beings, whatever they were held in some esteem by the people. They preserved their bodies, etc. They may have been mummified by the people. So this is an ancient fabric that shows an ancient textile that shows a being, looks exactly like the NAZCA mummies, with 3 fingers, etc., with, in the shape of the head, with an egg inside it, and giving birth to either an egg or a being. I see little arms there, so it could be that the being has hatched in this picture. But yeah, this is apparently an ancient textile that was shown at the hearing that seems to confirm that these were living beings that laid eggs, and that the people knew about them, and they were integrated into their culture with, whatever that means. Fascinating, fascinating material. So yeah, let's move on from the eggs. The breastplates that were in some of these specimens, and interestingly, the breastplates, the implants, were only found in the females, which is really, really peculiar. So it's not simply because the one female was injured by a cat and the breastplate was put in to reinforce her sternum. Apparently that was just a common thing they did with the females for whatever reason. One theory is it serves some sort of communication feature. Well, one of the main elements of this alloy was osmium, which is a really interesting metal. It's used, among other things, for electrical contacts. It is among the rarest elements in the Earth's crust, making only 50 parts per trillion. It is estimated to be about 0.6 parts per billion in the universe, and is therefore the rarest precious metal. The rarest precious metal in the universe was a component of this implant, and it was not discovered. This metal was not even discovered in our culture until a couple of hundred years ago. But these beings were using it 1,000 years ago. And it is also said to be used in satellites and cell phones. So this is a very rare metal used for high-tech purposes, and these beings were using it. They were technologically sophisticated. Either that or some other being was doing the surgery on them, potentially one of the larger beings. But, that's just speculation. We have no clue. But there is some really interesting information about the metal that seems to indicate that these beings may have an off-world extraterrestrial explanation. So I'm going to play a minute of the video from the presentation. Hopefully I won't get a copyright claim. So fingers crossed, here goes.
Use like technological or any other kind of use of that sort. There's also chloride of silver, and this would speak of that this is really not something terrestrial or human that contains it, because that would cause a very strong intoxication. The silver is not something that has anti-oxidating properties like the titanium. Silver is a metal that when produces chlorides, it produces oxides, and it cannot remain inside the organism from Earth, because it would have from Earth. Also, silver is a very, very powerful electrical conductor, and it has been discovered that it's the best natural conductor that exists.
So there you go. There is evidence right there. I'm not going to say it's conclusive evidence, but it's definitely suggestive evidence that these beings come from somewhere else. What other explanations could there be? Well, they could be terrestrial beings. They could have naturally evolved on this Earth, some sort of offshoot of birds or dinosaurs, something like that. Totally possible, all within the realms of, feasibility, I guess. But if so, there's no connecting fossil record, right, that would account for that. Now, of course, there's gaps in our fossil record before, right? There's plenty of gaps, right? But this is a big gap. This is a big gap to go from, unintelligent, birds and reptiles to highly technological beings like this. That's a huge friggin' gap. So is that plausible, or is it more plausible knowing that we know that there are off-world beings, there are ETs in other dimensionals? Is it more plausible that they are one of those? So let me know what you think in the comments below. But this researcher seems convinced this evidence of the metals suggests they come from off-world. Okay, I'll just go over a few tweets that are going around with some additional information. In a remarkable disclosure, the University of Ica, and this was during the hearing, they presented their findings during the hearing, has announced the results of a 4-year study into the Nazca mummies, declaring the specimens to be authentic, non-human, and previously unknown to science. This conclusion, backed by 11 scientists and doctors associated with the institution, challenges conventional understanding and prompts a re-evaluation of history as we know it. Notably, skepticism has been met with the response that only those who have not examined the mummies in person have deemed them fabricated, while those who have studied them up close support their authenticity. The University of Ica's accreditation by SUNIDU, the highest standard in Peru for educational institutions, adds a layer of credibility to their findings. As the academic community awaits the publication of detailed findings on the university's official website, this announcement stirs both excitement and controversy. The claim that these mummies are non-human entities unknown to science could have significant implications for various fields, from anthropology to exobiology. However, such extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One of the scientists said during the hearing that indeed extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and they think they have met that threshold. They think they have supplied extraordinary evidence. And based on what I'm saying, he's not wrong. The presenter from the university also said the university was opening up these specimens to international study and inviting anybody with the right qualifications and abilities to come and study these beings. And I hope scientists from around the world take up that call, that have the courage to get over the stigma of studying these bodies and do so in a robust fashion, so these results can be more widely accepted. Because as long as they're only studied by Mexicans and South Americans, there is I hate to say it, but a racist tendency toward not accepting their results in the way that a Western scientist, for example, would be more accepted. And I think that's very unfortunate. And but it is what it is. And so we do need, for an international scientist, for the international science community to investigate and study these things in a robust and sincere fashion, to get to the bottom of the truth of what these beings are, so that that truth can become more widely accepted by the world. Because I think only when that happens, when will we have real disclosure. And they may be able to find things that the scientists that have studied it so far haven't been able to find. More evidence, for example, that they are off-world. If they are off-world, for example, where are their ships? Where is their technology? Where are their gizmos? I want some gizmos, guys. I don't know about you. And this is another really interesting thing presented at the hearing. According to theory, Haman, I may be mispronouncing that, there could be hundreds of more bodies to be discovered around the Nazca region. And some of them may look different from the ones that have been shown so far. There does seem to be a little variety in what we are able to see here. Jaime says there is scientific evidence that a body belongs to a hybrid being whose DNA corresponds to 2 different types of monkeys, to humans and also to an unidentified genetic component. And that is really interesting as well, the idea that these could be hybrids. So is that what they are? Are they, created beings, created by, ETs? Is that what we're looking at here? There is evidence to suggest that Bigfoot, for example, could be a hybrid species. David Paulides, the missing 411 researcher, submitted some DNA Bigfoot to a crime lab, and half of that DNA was human. The other half was unknown, suggesting that Bigfoot is a hybrid species created by ETs. Could the NAZCA mummies be something similar to that? I guess time will tell, right? Time will tell. And what does Mike Colangelo say? Mexico's Congress heard from researchers on Tuesday who declared authentic a set of three-fingered Peruvian mummies recently presented as potential evidence of non-human life forms, while declining to certify that the remains were extraterrestrial. Although that one researcher did strongly suggest that they were. But again, I'm not definitively saying they're ET. I think it's more likely that they're hybrids of some sort, but yeah, we just don't know. We just don't know. Anthropologist Roger Zuniga of San Luis Gonzaga National University, and I'm sorry I'm butchering these names, in Ica, Peru, said researchers had studied 5 similar specimens over 4 years. They're real, he told Reuters on the sidelines of the session. There was absolutely no human intervention in the physical and biological formation of these beings. Yes, he also said he didn't know the origins. And he presented a letter signed by 11 researchers from the university declaring the same. The letter made clear, however, they were not implying the bodies were extraterrestrial. And yeah, we need to know what these beings are and where they came from. And there's actually an article in ABC News, believe it or not. Mainstream media is actually starting to pick this up. ETs return to Mexico Congress as case for non-human beings pressed. The lower chamber of Mexico's Congress once again turned to spectacle Tuesday, devoting hours of its time to a controversial character who pressed the case for non-human beings he said were found in Peru. Well, of course, it wasn't Jaime pressing this case. He was simply presenting it. It was the researchers who were, declaring this information, right? So a little bit of a spin there, but it's ABC. What you going to do? Yeah, and I'll let you read the article at your leisure, but I'll link to it in the description below. But as you can see, at least mainstream news is covering this story, spin or no spin. So, but yeah, the evidence is very persuasive and very compelling that these are authentic, anomalous beings of some sort. Again, we don't have conclusive evidence one way or the other what they are or where they came from. But I want to know, don't you? We need mainstream Western science to get on board with this and study this stuff in a vigorous way to determine what these beings are and to find out everything we can about them. Because, yeah, like I say, this is disclosure, guys. This could be disclosure if scientists have the guts to study it. So I hope they do. I hope they take up the call, because this is huge, guys. This is game-changing. This is going to rock the world if people have the guts to study it. So, yeah, let's hope that happens, guys. But I am no longer on the fence about these bodies. I believe they are genuinely anomalous. Now, I don't know what that means, but like I say, I want to know. Do you want to know? But we now have, a new medical exam, a CT scan that shows these are intact skeletons. They are not cobbled together pieces. We have some DNA results that suggest that at least one of them is human, which is hard to believe. So is that contamination? What is that? We don't know. But Jaime is on the case. Neil deGrasse Tyson has responded, interestingly, and there's some additional information. So yeah, let's just dive in. Here's this is from Jaime Maussan. This is really interesting. I wish I could read the letter, but I don't have a translation. But he says the translation of his tweet is the Chamber of Deputies through I don't know what that word is, has carefully requested from the National Autonomous University of Mexico scientific peer review of the biological evidence of possible non-human intelligence presented at the FANA hearing. So there you go, the Chamber of Deputies, I'm not familiar with that body, is requesting additional analysis of these bodies. Not just any investigation, but a scientific peer review. So I can't wait to see what they find. That's exactly what we need, is more science and more analysis from credible people of these really intriguing bodies, whatever they ultimately turn out to be. At first, I was leaning very much toward the debunk. It looked like a pretty solid debunk. But that CT scan really abolished that debunk in my mind, if indeed they were being honest about the results of that CT scan. And the director of the hospital himself was present during that scan, so I have to assume that it was a legit scan. We definitely need more eyes on this and more science on it, but as of now, I'm thinking those are intact specimens, not cobbled together hoaxes or dolls made for some ritualistic purpose 1,000 years ago. That's not to say there aren't such dolls and such totems. And let's go over this really intriguing post from Open Minded Approach. The ancient Dogu figurines from Japan are similar to the NAZCA mummies from Peru. They are also portrayed with 3 fingers. Too many coincidences. Let's check that out. What in the world? I mean, that is startlingly similar to the mummies, the alien bodies from Peru, whatever they are, alien, human, hybrids, whatever they are, that is shockingly similar. So have these beings been seen, for many, many years all across the world? And, maybe there have been figurines based on them. I would love more information about that. But I am, very intrigued by these Dogu figurines. What do you think, guys? Are these legit beings here, and they've been visiting people all over the world for, thousands or tens of thousands of years, and people have made, figurines based on them? I mean, that is a shocking similarity right there. It really is. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson has been compelled to comment on these bodies. Let's hear what he has to say.
Well, first of all, I like what they did in Mexico. They had what they claimed are alien bodies, and they brought it out in front of their Congress. That's better than leaving them in a locked box and saying you and no one else can get to see them. So that's a start. But in science, a new truth, an objective truth, is only established when multiple labs can analyze whatever your claim is. When we brought rocks back from the moon, we distributed them to all the labs of the world. So everybody participated in that discovery. So here, bring out samples to others and let other people, skeptical people in other labs, test this. So either verify it or falsify it, and then we move on.
What was your reaction when you saw the images?
I was surprised because if they're from another planet, why do they look so human? They have 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, shoulders, hips, femur, a rib. Why? Most life on Earth shares DNA in common with us. It looks nothing like us. So how could somebody? So that was my first thought. Second, any corpses or mummified remains, there is no bone in your nose. It's an open hole into your skull. These aliens have intact noses, okay? If indeed that is their nose, okay? For sure.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. They've got noses. That is interesting. I had never thought about that before. What do you guys think? Is that significant that these remains have noses? But at least he is not dismissing these beings outright, which may in fact be suspicious since he's such a huge debunker. But he is saying that they need more analysis and that it was the right thing to do to bring these things forward to get more eyes on. And, he may be saying that because it has kind of made a mockery of the whole Mexican UFO hearing and kind of derailed any positive press it would have gotten. And he may like that. But at the same time, maybe he's being genuine and saying, hey, if you've got evidence of alien beings, bring it out and let us study it. And I support that. For once, I am in agreement with Neil deGrasse Tyson. One of the most intriguing things about the bodies is the weird powder that is coating these bodies. Well, there has actually been some analysis of this, and I'm going to play it for you. It's not in English, so I'm going to minimize my head so that you can read the subtitles.
Pies, pero ahora si yo les muestro a ustedes este conjunto,
Esto parece un muñeco, pero no es un muñeco. Esta es la momia Luisa, con sus implantes, sus huevos en diferentes posiciones, hasta de espaldas. Las momias, los cuerpos, cuando están tan desecados y no tienen agua en su organismo, el TAC, igual que la resonancia magnética, le cuesta definir lo que son las aristas, todo lo que son las uniones, los cartílagos, las rótulas, le cuesta definir. Pero a medida que va teniendo ese tipo de densidad, digamos, de agua, de tendones, de nervios, de músculos, pues lo descubre mejor. Entonces, demasiado bien están conservadas. Una de las cosas que descubrió el equipo ruso de Konstantin Korotkov es que las muestras que obtuvieron de la momia María, por ejemplo, tenían una sustancia oleosa de un olor muy fuerte y luego tenían encima el polvo de diatomea. Y luego, a más, cloruro de cadmio. Y el cloruro de cadmio es un potente veneno que se utiliza incluso para las tinciones, las galvanoplastias, pero también es un gran fungicida, igual que la diatomea. Pero ¿a que no sabían ustedes que el cloruro de cadmio no existe en la Tierra? Como tal no existe, se tiene que fabricar. Y se tiene que fabricar de manera muy sofisticada, que hace 1000 años era imposible, con ácido clorhídrico. Entonces, cuidado porque estamos empezando a sumar cosas como las que está comentando el señor Zúñiga, Enrico también aquí con nosotros, y tenemos la cuestión de los implantes, que me gustaría ahondar un poquito en ello, preguntarle a usted, señor Zúñiga, no quiero que se nos escape así por las buenas, sobre la cuestión de los implantes. Tenemos el de Josefina y el de Luisa, aquí los puede ver, no sé si ha tenido la oportunidad de ver esta comparativa.
Sí, sí, claro, los cortes que se hizo, el corte que se hizo del implante del pecho de Luisa, eso lo visualizamos en el mismo laboratorio de tomografía. El radiólogo hizo el corte, pudimos ver, como verán ustedes, no es un metal compacto, sino hay una cavidad interna, ¿no? En todo el cuerpo.
So there you go. These beings, whatever they are, if they were dolls or something like that, if they were created artifacts, it would have been very difficult, according to these people, to have created them 1,000 years ago, because they just didn't have the ability to do that. The peoples of the time that we know of, at least, did not have those abilities. Now, of course, we are finding all the time ancient peoples that had abilities that we don't think that they should have had. And so maybe this is one more example of that. It is entirely possible. But again, that CT scan was pretty impressive. But whatever the case, it looks like more analysis is coming per Jaime Maussan, and there's even been talk of Avi Loeb getting in on this action and studying these specimens. I would love that. If somebody like Avi Loeb, with his respectability and his mainstream cred, could verify these are intact beings of some sort, that would go a long way to furthering this discussion in the public consciousness. Now he may find out that they are simply humans with mutations, which is entirely possible. I think Gary Nolan reached the same conclusion about a different set of ancient remains, those little mummies, even littler than these guys. But at the same time, these things have eggs. They have eggs. That is not something that humans have. Not like this. I would love some investigation or study done on these eggs. Now, maybe they're just so fossilized you can't tell anything from them, but that definitely seems like an intriguing place to start studying if there is something that can be studied from those eggs, because if there's a little alien embryo in there, or a hybrid or something in there, that would be a game changer for this conversation. But To wrap it up, there's going to be new analysis done on these beings that's going to be peer-reviewed, which is very exciting. And I, will keep my eyes on this story. If you see something about it before I do, please let me know. And let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Do you still think it's a doll or a relic from 1,000 years ago, or a hoax cooked up by Jaime Maussan and the other guys, or something like that? Or are you persuaded that it may be something more anomalous? Now, I'm still on the fence about it. I don't want to say that I believe wholeheartedly that these are aliens or non-humans, but I do find the evidence very compelling that they may, in fact, be genuinely anomalous in some sense. Okay, this is from a news segment by Telemundo. And it's so good, and it's got such good information in it. It does such good coverage of the debate over the mummies that I'm going to possibly play the whole thing. Let's see.
Peruvian and foreign investigators, the Peruvian city police.
Son falsas.
Tremendous controversy broke out in Peru after the Ministry of Culture announced that the so-called extraterrestrial mummies are fake, calling Peruvian and foreign researchers who said their origin was from another world as clowns. It has the details, including the reaction of the Mexican researcher, Jaime Maussan. In simple terms, it is a fraud. Flavio Estrada, a forensic archaeologist summoned by the Ministry of Culture, said that these small mummies seized at customs 3 months ago when they were trying to leave for Mexico, where similar ones had been presented in Congress, are nothing more than dolls armed with animal bones and glue. They are not extraterrestrials. They are not intraterrestrials. They are not a new species. They are not hybrids. They are none of those things that this group of scientific papers say that for 6 years have been presenting these elements, dispersing them, presenting them in the Mexican Congress. Joyce Mantilla, one of the defenders of the so-called NAZCA mummies, responded. These dolls are not the same as what is at the University of Ica, nor what was presented in Mexico. What they have gone out to do is a farce, trying to confuse public opinion. The Ministry of Defense of the Republic bodies real studies studied by more than 40 professionals from different parts of the world and experts ranging from biologists, geneticists, forensic experts. Mantilla accuses the Ministry of Culture of passing off these crafts as part of the same group of tridactyl mummies found in 2017 between the Palpa and Nazca Desert in southern Peru. When he said it, he received the backlash. You've been lying for 6 years. You have spent your time being Maussan's clown. These are dolls. They are armed dolls. As much as those who are in ICA, like the falsehood of the hybrids with 3 fingers, the big doll, that is false. The only one who believes that story is you, and you are a failure. Jaime Maussan, a Mexican researcher mentioned in the controversy, also responded. In reality, they are the ones who are committing the fraud. The bodies that are at the University of Ica are legitimate. And now the Ministry of Culture, in such a light way, wants to destroy an investigation, a case, by presenting it in this way. The researchers of the so-called NAZCA mummies are preparing an important revelation at the end of the month that will not go down well with the Peruvian Ministry of Culture. In addition, they will announce a discovery that will surprise many. In Lima, Liliana Choi, Telemundo. Thank you, Liliana. Journalist Jaime Maussan said that the NAZCA mummies that he brought to the Mexican Congress are the most important discovery in history, and that the Peruvian Ministry of Culture does not want to accept that extraterrestrials have been visiting us for thousands of years.
Nos visitan desde hace miles de años.
All right, got an exciting discovery at the end of the month. I'm really curious to see what that is. We know that Peru is holding its own hearing, so what is going to come out of that? I can't wait to find out. But to stick with the topic of the Ministry of Culture of Peru running this smear campaign, this disinformation campaign, showing these obvious dolls and trying to pass them off as the NAZCA mummies, well, apparently the guy who they seized those dolls from never claimed they were the NAZCA mummies. They claimed they were dolls. He said they were dolls. And now he's saying, give me my dolls back. Per Gonzalo Chavez, last night in Peru, a significant development occurred regarding the dolls presented at an event. The creator of these dolls, artist Manuel Cazares, has previously informed the ministry that the items were indeed dolls and had requested their return prior to the event. Despite this, his request was ignored. This incident appears to be part of a larger disinformation campaign that has gained international attention. What the Ministry of Culture does not tell is that those bodies that I analyze were dolls created by Manuel Cazares. He himself told the ministry to return his dolls because it was a request that had been requested of him, and the ministry did not do so. So they knew these were dolls. They knew that the owners said they were dolls, and yet they went ahead and presented them as the NAZCA mummies in an effort to debunk the NAZCA mummies. And that's just such obvious disinformation. It's disheartening to see that some people are actually falling for it. So yeah, don't fall for that. That is just another hatchet job by, I don't know if it's the control group exactly, although it's very possible that the control group could have some sway in Peru. Entirely possible that the Ministry of Culture is in the pocket of the control group. The Ministry of Culture could also be doing this for religious reasons, or just because they are, married to the mainstream scientific community. Whatever the case may be, they are clearly trying to discredit the NAZCA mummies in a very obvious and blatant way. But what are the NAZCA mummies? What were those beings? Just who are those guys? Are they still around? Where do they come from? Well, per Gonzalo Chavez, in Peru, the Archaeology Institute that's finding the bodies states that he is being told by local indigenous tribes in the Andes that they are creatures that come from underground in the mountains. So, the locals have been interacting with these beings for thousands of years. They're in the textiles and the artwork of the peoples of the time, 1,000, 2,000 years ago. And they may have some ongoing interactions with the beings. At least it appears they have folklore and mythology around these beings, indicating that they are still around and they're underground and in the mountains. So, it's totally possible if these things were around 1,000 and 2,000 years ago, that they are still around. That would definitely settle the debate if they stepped out of the shadows. And this is interesting. This is from J. Alberto, who may or may not be an official in the Mexican government. Says, this is important. The government of Peru, through its transparency portal, has already confirmed that it has not studied the biological evidence investigated by the University of Ica and presented in the Congress of Mexico. So they were studying dolls. They were not studying the actual NAZCA mummies. And the government of Peru, through its transparency portal, is confirming that. So amazing stuff. It's, I hope people aren't falling for the disinformation. And, we need to get more people studying the NAZCA mummies. And that's not going to happen if people are falling for the BS. We need more labs. We need better labs. We need the best minds and the best equipment that is available to us to study these amazing specimens and finally get some answers about what exactly they are.